Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about gear. This is Steven.
Hi.
He knows about gear.
Cool.
We're holding my old cameras that I still own, haven't sold yet, because I don't know if I want to sell them yet. But this is the 5D Mark IV, and this is
Canon C200.
Yeah, and they were my workhorses for the past 2 years. This one even longer before, like 3-4 years. Incredible cameras, still very great options for people looking to dip their toes in the used market, not doing like super new stuff. But we're gonna kind of go through the reasons why I upgraded to the new systems that I have upgraded to, but kind of want to chat through some of the old stuff first. You used a 5D4 before?
Yep.
Wait, no,
Nope.
you did 5D3.
I went from the 5D3 directly to the R.
Because you didn't want to mess with mirrors anymore. Why?
It's so boring. So last year, mirrors.
Oh my gosh.
No, at the time that I was interested in upgrading my 5D3s, the Canon R and the first RF lenses were introduced, and I decided that I kind of wanted to just take the leap and try something brand new. I think I bought the R in the spring of 2019, which was like 6 months after they were released. So just tried it out, didn't really know what to expect. The EVF took a long time to get used to, but once I did get used to it, I've never looked back.
EVF stands for electronic viewfinder. In these cameras, in these mirrored cameras, you have an optical viewfinder, which just is basically like looking through glass. And you're just seeing your scene as your normal eye would see it.
Yep.
But an electronic viewfinder gives you the display, like an actual, but don't show the new camera yet.
I'll never show you the new camera yet.
It's in the title.
It is! It's a secret.
Even on these cameras, you could see the LCD screen in the back. You could see a live view of your image. If you pulled the camera off your face, you could shoot that way, live view. But the electronic viewfinder brought it to the actual eyepiece, and you could see your image exposed the way it was going to be right in the viewfinder. So that changed everything. Canon was a little late to the game.
They were.
Fujifilm was doing it, and I was considering switching to Fujifilm. All of my studio mates were doing it, and I was just like, I felt like I was missing out, but at this point I am happy that I held off because everyone switched to Canon then. Yeah, I forgot you didn't have the 5D4.
I never actually owned the 5D4.
Did you feel like it was a good switch to go from 5D3 to R?
Yes, actually, because the Canon R is more or less a mirrorless version of this exact camera. Some of the specs are a little newer, some things like autofocus were a little faster in the R versus the 5D4, but for the most part, it was basically Canon's way of just kind of getting in by making a camera that was familiar and shared a lot of similar characteristics to the 5D4 without like breaking the mold.
I think one of the biggest things, the hesitations I had, because I was thinking about switching to the R, was that it had one card slot.
That's true, it did only have one.
And wedding photographers definitely don't like that.
Yep, except Sam Hurd.
He just went for it.
He just went for it because the other nice thing about cameras like the R series from Canon is that you can use a USB-C cable to plug directly into the camera and transfer all of your files off of. So for the first 2 to 3 years, 2 years that I owned the R, I actually never took the SD card out of the camera. I only used USB-C to transfer photos out because the biggest point of failure for SD cards is the in and out of the camera.
Yeah. Do you feel like the 5D Mark IV is still a good option today?
Yes.
If you're on a budget.
If you're on a budget, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I still own one of my 5D3s because it's very nostalgic for one. But you can still make incredible pictures with it.
Yeah.
It's really just a matter of knowing what you're doing with the equipment that you have in your hand more than anything else.
I virtually built my whole career on this camera, photo and video. I rented this camera to go to Yosemite to shoot Tyler and Ellie's wedding film. It was like one of the most transformative wedding films I ever shot.
Yep.
So from there, video-wise, I upgraded to the 1DX Mark II.
Yep.
Photo-wise, that didn't do anything. It's like the same camera, just shoots faster. But the video specs, I was like, oh, it shoots 120p, like, oh, super slow motion.
He made those exact sounds because I was at the first wedding that you used that camera at. Yeah.
That was kind of a short season, and I built it out like a little mini cinema camera, which I loved, with a top handle and more dynamic range and like different frame rates, until my buddy Mike got a C100 Mark II and got an actual Canon cinema camera that was old at that point. And then I was like, okay. Especially for my workflow, because I do YouTube, I do education, I need XLR cables like on microphones like this that just go straight into the camera, which it is right now. We're shooting on another C200. We decided to upgrade from that C100 Mark II. Instead of me getting that same camera, we both went in on a C200, each of us. And I mean, 2.5 years later, we're still rocking these things around the studio. It felt like a huge transformative part of my career to upgrade to this camera because of what it's capable of. Yes, there's tons of buttons and it looks really intimidating, but it does do a lot of the same stuff as bigger end DSLRs or mirrorless cameras. It just has more functionality, and it can shoot in 12-bit Canon RAW Light, which is a huge upgrade, but massive files.
We're talking huge files.
We're talking like 1.2 terabytes per wedding if you choose to shoot that. Two of the biggest things with this camera is that it has built-in ND filters in the body, so I'm not having to screw on ND filters in the front, and it has the built-in XLR that just goes straight into camera. That one's not as important for weddings, much more for, you know, this kind of stuff, but still gave me the ability to use mics like the NTG4 Plus without having to convert it into camera. So those two things were just massive for me, along with the versatility of the codec that I could shoot, which was RAW.
Also, unlimited record times.
That's good too.
Huge.
Yeah, for like a back camera in a ceremony, and even just like setting it up for a live stream or something like that. Just much more versatility. So you might be wondering, why'd you upgrade again? And like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't upgrade cameras or systems that often. I feel like I have been more frequently in the past 3 years, but I don't like making really quick decisions on gear because I really think that older gear or the used market gear that always exists is always gonna be good enough that you don't need the newest best thing. But it made sense for me now to start upgrading into the new stuff, especially since it's been out for nearly 1.5 years at this point. That's usually about how long I wait. So drum roll.
Ta-da! It's an R5
and a C70. Yeah, these are essentially the souped up versions of the cameras we were just holding.
Yep.
And into the deeper part of Canon's mirrorless lineup. You have the option of the R6 and the R5.
It really is so interesting to see those side by side.
So this is a thinner body, but it takes the same batteries. Biggest thing is you have the upgrade to electronic viewfinder and
RF glass.
Let's go.
Oh, that's my favorite. It's huge. The ironic thing about a lot of the Canon stuff is that the lens has got enormous and the body's got smaller.
On top of that, if I go into this system with photography, upgrading to an R5, it would make sense that I would also be able to use that RF glass on a Canon cinema camera. This is a Canon cinema camera. It's just not quite as beefy or big as other cinema cameras in the past, C200, C300, C500. But man, this is just like a C200 souped up in a tinier body. It has all those same features I was talking about with built-in ND. Big difference here is that it has mini XLR on the side, which is a little cumbersome because you have to convert XLR to mini XLR. Not that big of a deal. Has a flip screen, but it doesn't have an electronic viewfinder, which I actually haven't had an issue with at all yet.
Yep, and the C200 did have a viewfinder on that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
EVF.
Yep.
You can put an EVF on top of this if you want to, but that just makes the rig bigger. I've come to realize that if you just increase the luminance and the menu settings by 2 values.
2 units.
2 units. That's much easier to see outside, especially if you're looking at your waveform. I'm not gonna go crazy in depth on these 2 cameras because we did cover that on the newest edition of the Classroom. If you're interested at all, we're in launch week of the Classroom. If you're looking to educate yourself on wedding photography, wedding filmmaking, we go all the way in on all the new gear. I have an entire like 1.5 hour gear module and an updated one where we go in depth on these cameras. I mean, you have higher megapixel for photo on this camera.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're going from 30 to 45, which is a pretty substantial increase. Really good for cropping, which is incredible. It's a very versatile camera because of that. And I'd say the biggest upgrade that I think most people would notice between a camera like the 5D4 or the R, because they're very similar, to an R6 or an R5 is the autofocus performance. It is light years faster than what you used to be working on, and that it really kind of feels like you're able to keep up with the pace of a wedding day. You can really get into like the documentarian groove because you're not waiting for your camera to catch up. If anything, this is almost a little faster than you are, so it gives you a lot more bandwidth to work with.
And then as far as C70 goes, you have a different sensor. It's got a DGO dual gain output sensor that has even more stops of dynamic range. So you just get that crazy flat profile. in a format that is like 1/6 the size of the Canon raw light and the C200. So my workflow has changed tremendously. About, my file sizes are like 1/4 to 1/5 of the amount and size than what I was shooting prior on the C200. So that's a huge benefit to me. I'm continuously working on building out this camera and what it looks like on a wedding day, but just wanted to give an update on the decisions I've made recently. And as I mentioned, we talk about these in depth in the new module in the classroom. You can get a free module within the classroom. I talk about client experience, where I do a whole fake meeting with him and his wife, where they're asking questions like everything a client would ask in one of those first meetings. I go through my contract, I go through my CRM, how I invoice and work my contracts, pay, all that good stuff. You can go check it down below. If you're still within the week of launch, you can purchase the classroom right now. If you're not within the week of launch, you can get that free module down below, or any other education that I'm offering at the time of viewing this video. I mean, what does the future look like?
Future cameras.
What are they?
Canon R1.
R1, which is like a souped up hot rod of a camera that wedding photographers won't need.
Definitely won't need.
80 megapixels.
It doesn't even exist yet.
Well, yeah, but it's probably just gonna be way more than you would ever need shooting weddings.
Definitely.
It feels like the R6 and the R5, both incredible options for a wedding photo right now, and probably will be for like 5 years.
Like a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, it's hard to think that, well, you'd say that at any point in a camera's life cycle, it's hard to think that this would ever be updated.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
I really don't know, especially on the wedding front, how much more I would need in a camera than this. It feels like this has everything I need as far as functionality, file size, dynamic range, audio options. So, but they do have the rumored C50, which is more of gonna be an entry level cinema camera that's not as fancy as the C70, or maybe the rumored C90, which is going to be a souped up version of this.
Yep.
Which
could be cool. And the interesting thing about those is that, again, rumors, but they're supposed to have more of a brick style body, like a red Komodo.
you could build it out easier on set if you're doing commercial work.
Exactly.
It's gonna be that more entry level commercial camera for people like me. So it might target me, but probably not necessary for wedding films. If you use it on wedding films, probably unbelievable, but
Oh, most definitely.
anyway, this is out of my ballpark. I don't really talk about gear all that much until I have it and learn it. And then even then, I'm just like, well, it's just a tool, and that's how I feel about gear. And maybe you feel that way too. Let me know what you think down in the description. If you're interested in any of these cameras, or any of the ones in the future, or any of the ones of the past, if that feels like a budget option for you. Take their picture. Do it. Smile.
Smile, YouTube.
Cheese. Bye.
Oh, wait. And we forgot to mention, the coolest thing about this camera is that you can actually shoot vertical video with it.
But it's gonna have probably stupid video